The federal SBIR and STTR programs, they provide non-dilutive funding for startups to develop innovative solutions to problems that our nation and society may be facing. There are two avenues to secure those funds. They include granting and contracting avenues. Today, we will be talking about contracting agencies. We will start off with an overview of the SBIR and STTR programs. The SBIR program provides R&D funding and financing for the development of innovative solutions. There are 11 agencies that participate, and they have extramural budgets that exceed $100 million. The STTR program is a sister program to SBIR that is designed to facilitate cooperative R&D between small businesses and U.S. research institutions. Agencies that participate in this program have extramural budgets that are greater than $1 billion per year. Something to keep in mind is that the small business is always the applicant of the awardee, regardless of if they go the SBIR or STTR route. Over $4.5 billion are invested into startups every year through the SBIR and STTR programs, and there are over 7,000 new awards each year. The SBIR and STTR programs are gated, meaning you need to successfully pass phase 1 in order to be invited to submit a proposal to phase 2. Phase 0 is focused on proposal writing and finding alignment with either contracts or grants through the SBIR and STTR programs. Once you have a successful proposal submission and acceptance, you go through phase 1 efforts, which are focused on concept development or feasibility testing. Following the success of a phase 1, you are invited to submit to a phase 2 opportunity, and there's a focus on prototype development. Following a phase 2 opportunity, depending on if you're interested in contracting or granting agencies, your commercialization pathways will look a little bit different. For granting agencies, the startup and applicant, they are able to identify their own initial customers. For contracting agencies, a federal agency will typically be your customer for phase 3. It is important to note that phase 3 is not SBIR funded, and there may be limited direct funding coming from different agencies for commercialization efforts. There are eligibility requirements for the SBIR and STTR program. The applicant needs to be organized for profit and have a place of business that is in the United States. More than 50% of the business needs to be owned and controlled by one or more individuals who are citizens or permanent residents of the United States. And it needs to be considered a small business, so it cannot have more than 500 employees. Generally, SBIR and STTR agencies are not focused on purchasing equipment, commercializing technology that has already been developed, or one that has very low risk and only needs capital. Typically, phase 1 and phase 2 awards are focused on performing high risk and potentially high impact R&D for new innovations. There are nuances between agencies. There are 11 agencies that participate in SBIR and STTR. All of the agencies that you see here are SBIR agencies. The ones in gray also have an STTR program, as their extramural R&D budgets are higher than $1 billion per year. Of the agencies on the previous slide, some produce grants and some produce contracts, and then HHS produces both. The majority of HHS opportunities are grants with a few contracts per year. To generally understand the difference between grants and contracts, grants are typically used for exploratory research and very early development. They allow for more flexibility in defining the scope of work, and they allow for pivots if that exploratory research points the principal investigator in a new direction. There is more of a focus on scientific and technical merit with less emphasis on immediate commercialization. You still need to focus on commercialization for SBIR and STTR, but your phase 3 customer may be acquired a little bit later down the line. Contracts, on the other hand, they have very specific deliverables and milestones that are required and outlined by the agency. The scope of work is very aligned with agency immediate needs and requirements, and there's more of a focus on meeting specific agency objectives and solving defined problems. And this is because at the end of a contract, at the end of a phase 2 effort there, an agency is typically looking to acquire, integrate, or license technology that has been created through one of their contracts. There are nuances between agencies that participate. Here we will dive a little bit more in depth into the differences between grants and contracts. Grants are going to provide less specific topics and are a more flexible instrument designed to provide funds to support a public purpose. The principal investigator has more freedom in defining the scope of work, and the scope of work can change depending on findings. There's more flexibility in the use of funds, and it requires the best efforts in research. Again, there is the ability to pivot based on earlier findings. Questions and answers about the solicitation are generally not made public, and you can typically talk to program managers throughout the year. And for grants, the applicant defines the scope of work. Contracts, on the other hand, are highly focused topics really created by the contracting agency to meet needs that they have already identified. It is going to be a binding agreement between a buyer and a seller for goods or services. The scope of work is fairly inflexible, and the contracting agency will typically tell you what they're looking for at the end, and it is the duty of the applicant and awardee to deliver on that scope of work. Generally, payments are based on deliverables and milestones with more fiscal requirements. And at the end of a contract or successful contract, there is the requirement of delivery of promised goods and services determined by the contract type. Questions and answers about the solicitation must be made public if they provide a competitive advantage. And generally, applicants can only connect with contracting agencies during a pre-solicitation period. And for contracting agencies, the government customer will be the one defining the scope of work, as you will be delivering a final product to solve needs that they have identified. When should you pursue contracts? Contracts are really focused on aligning with defined agency needs. They are ideal for startups that have a solution to a specific problem that have been identified by a contracting agency. An agency will issue a request for proposals that has very clear objectives and requirements, and if you're able to meet those, contracts may be a good avenue for you. Contracts are generally aligned with later stage development and are suitable for startups that may have more mature technologies ready to be developed into more specific applications geared towards the contracting agency. If your technology is closer to commercialization and you can meet strict deliverable timelines, then contracts may be a better opportunity for you. Keep in mind, contracts will require specific deliverables. As you're approaching contracts, ask yourself, can the project that you're proposing or the scope of work that you're proposing, can it deliver concrete results that meet the precise needs of the agency? Contracts require adherence to detailed performance metrics and reporting requirements for specific agency as well. As with all federal opportunities, think about strategic alignment. If your startup's strategic goals align closely with the mission and objectives of a contracting agency, you may be a good fit for that specific opportunity. Here's a list of participating contracting agencies in the SBIR and STTR programs. They include the DoD, NASA, the Institute of Educational Sciences, DHS, DOT, and the EPA. The types of innovations, technologies, and solutions that they fund are listed here. And keep in mind, for all of their contracts, they're going to have very specific needs that they look to be delivered on from the applicant or the startup at the end of the period of performance. Award amounts and periods of performances for phase 1 and phase 2 of contracting agencies are listed here. And for all of the granting agencies and the contracting agencies, there are going to be those nuances that I've already mentioned. In addition to them being either granting or contracting agencies, proposal submission processes, portals, and requirements will look different. Funding levels and periods of performances are going to vary. Some agencies, depending on their capacity and size and goals, they may have one solicitation or multiple solicitations per year. If it's a contracting or granting agency, your communication with topic authors is going to look different. Registration requirements are going to vary as well. All agencies will typically have their own unique registration requirements. And then as we've been chatting about, the funding vehicle is going to vary, with some agencies producing only grants, others only producing contracts, and HHS producing some contracts and mostly grants. As you're determining if grants are a good initial SBIR approach for you, you can also consider contracts in the near future. Many times it is recommended to utilize a phase strategy, with phase 1 focused on using a grant to conduct that early stage or very high risk research and really determine the feasibility of your product. If you have a successful phase 1, reach all your objectives, and are ready to start creating a prototype geared towards a specific need of an agency, then for phase 2, you can start to think about transitioning to contracts if your technology aligns with the specific agency needs and deliverables that they're looking for. With SBIR and STTR, you are able to switch between agencies from phase 1 and phase 2. Additionally, you can consider concurrent proposals. So you can submit both grants and contracts if your technology fits both exploratory research and then defined application scenarios. The only thing you can't do is take federal money and apply it to the same scope of work more than one time. If you're able to identify multiple scopes of work that align with multiple different agencies, you can have more than one proposal going on at a single time. Concurrent proposals also allow diversified development of your technology. So are you able to kind of look at your final product and innovation and then split into different components and leverage different agencies to develop those components? Regardless if you're choosing a granting or contracting agency, you will have to go through the proposal writing process. And this is a general view of what the process will look like. Initially, it is important to determine eligibility. Do you meet the requirements for the SBIR and STTR programs? Are you a small business? Are you organized for profit? Are you primarily US owned? Will the work be done in the United States? And then will the PI be primarily employed by the small business? If you are eligible, start thinking about innovative ideas that you would like to leverage this program for. Can you think of an idea or technology that responds to a specific need that an agency has or a need that has been identified by society? When you have that innovative idea, think about that your commercialization pathway. Who will be your first customer? How will your innovation scale during phase 3? Will you be looking towards the regular commercial market? Or will you be looking towards defense customers or government customers? That will determine if grants or contracts may be a better opportunity for you. Once you have determined those processes, it is important to complete required registrations. All agencies require you to have a SAM.gov registration with a unique entity identifier assigned. You will also have to complete SBA company registrations, and then all agencies are going to have specific registrations for their opportunities. Once those are complete, and those do take a little bit of a longer time, you can think about connecting with an agency to talk about topic fit, scope of work alignment. Keep in mind, if you are interested in a contracting agency, you will generally only be able to speak to technical points of contact or program managers during that pre-solicitation period. And if you are given a competitive advantage, they may have to disclose information that was produced during that one-on-one. For a granting agency, generally, you're able to connect with program managers at any point to talk about alignment questions. Once you've determined that an agency and opportunity are aligned with your efforts, start putting together that proposal package. Proposal packages will look different and sections will be called different things depending on agencies. But generally, you're expected to complete a technical proposal. You're expected to pull together resumes of key and senior personnel. You should detail how you've access to facilities that are required, and then identify budgets and then include budget justifications. Most agencies are going to have additional documentations that are required. Once your proposal package is together and you've pulled together all the necessary pieces, review the proposal before you actually submit it. Secure third-party reviewers that can look through the proposal. So can you find folks that are not part of the writing process to look over what you've written and make sure that it makes sense to outside audiences? Once you've reviewed, make sure that you submit the proposal package at least one day before the application is due. You don't want to wait for the last minute in case a registration may not be complete or some additional information may be needed. And then you'll have to wait. Award notification can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on the agency. Some award notifications come a lot earlier, and this will really depend on if you're interested in contracting or granting opportunities. And if you have any questions about strategy of when to go from contracting to granting agencies or vice versa, please feel free to reach out to NM Fast, and we're more than happy to provide support.